Good evening, everyone. Today is 10:13:12. I had a long ramble that I just did, and apparently YouTube only goes to so many minutes before it says, "Oh, can't do, it can't upload." I talked for about 15 minutes, so I'm going to try and condense what I had to say into a lot smaller, uh, I guess, video. Got home from the hospital today. We got Kyle here and Isabel, so we're officially a family of four today, and yeah, it's been awesome. Kyle just slept most of the day, and Isabel's been wanting to hold him, so interesting. You'll see behind me, I have some flowers from our neighbor Kirk and Brandy. Very awesome of you guys. Thank you very much. You guys are amazing. You guys are awesome people, and we're glad that you guys are in our neighborhood. You guys are great. So I finished up this book, The Secret History on the War on Cancer, and really kind of, I'm really glad I read it. I'm just gonna I'll give you some thoughts about, kind of what I read. But there's a chapter called Presumed Innocence that goes on to talk about, CT scans came out, and everyone just the presumed innocence is that they're good for us, even though there's no research behind it or anything like that. Even though there may not be any proof that there's harm, but that doesn't mean it doesn't harm us. No one's just ever studied it. CT scans come out, radiation scans come out, all that stuff comes out, and it's like, well, who said this is good for us? Why are we doing this? Why is it prescribed 7 times more today than it was, 10 years ago or whatever it was? But I was reading, and they said, one CT scan is the same risk as driving 4,000 kilometers. So it equates it to, driving on the freeway. You drive on the freeway, and, every time it's the same thing as like walking across the street. One person out of a million or whatever is going to get hit by a car crossing the street. There's a risk to that. So a CT scan, one CT scan is the same risk as driving 4,000 kilometers. So when I went to get my test, I had 3 CT scans: my neck, my chest, and my abdomen. So that's equivalent for me driving 12,000 kilometers. I think a kilometer is a mile and a half, so let's say 12,000 is maybe 15,000 or something like that, give or take. I don't know. But I think, what's a span of the United States is 5,000 or something like that. So it's equivalent to me driving my car back and forth 3 times across the United States. It's the same risk as one CT scan, and I took 3 of them. So pretty crazy. And then they also did some studies on radiation treatment, similar to what I went through. It's for lymphoma or non-Hodgkin's or something like that. So I went through 20, what is it, treatments of radiation on my face, and it's basically the same risk or the same exposure levels of that of the atom bombs that went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki or whatever it is. And I was looking at that and I was like, wait a second. So I'm getting treated for something just because I was told it somehow helps, even though after all my research and everything, it doesn't at all. That basically was the same as me being going through an atom bomb, being one of the survivors of the atom bomb. That's kind of messed up. So just kind of got me back into thinking about like, what am I really doing here? What am I really being exposed to without even asking about it? And then I went on to talk about toxic the industrial waste and the toxic cleanups, and the failure of the government and the agencies that are supposed to be there to do it. Just the utter and complete failure. You hear about the cleanups, and the big ones you hear about, which is like the what is it, Exxon Valdez, the what is it, BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and stuff. But what about all the steel foundries, and what about all the other companies that just dump toxic waste into our rivers, into our lakes, everything like that? Congress made a thing called the Superfund, or they passed a bill called the Superfund bill, which is supposed to go, and basically it was very short-sighted, because what it did is it said, well, we're not going to go after the people that originally did it. What we're going after is the people that may have money now, or the people that own the property now, and go after them for cleanup. And actually, Micah was telling me one of his friends had some property down in L.A. that he bought it, and he found out that it was like a toxic waste site, and the government went after him. He had to sell everything, claim bankruptcy, because even though it wasn't his deal, it was he owned it at that point in time. They came after him to clean it up. So like most governments, programs, it never really got off the ground, and was never used as it was intended to. And it went on to talk about OSHA, the same thing. How many OSHA violations are out there? There was a story about a Canada foundry that had shown to never be in compliance in over 40 years, and the groundwater would melt PVC, and the only way to really melt PVC is benzene, which is a carcinogen. And that was in the groundwater, and they were right by a river that fed into this entire town. And every time the government went there to take tests, they would tell them they could test somewhere, but they could never get where the water was, because the foundry workers would say, oh no, it's over here, oh no, it's over here, and keep delaying and delaying and delaying, and the government would never step up and do anything, and just, basically just not do anything, just be the government and not do anything. So very interesting. They went on to talk about, so part of I wanted to read you guys something. It's a little bit long, but it's pretty good. It talks about, it's called "The Most Influential Supreme Court Ruling You've Never Heard Of." It's the title of an essay by a group of scholars and scientists dismayed at changes in the way the courts handled admissible evidence. A radical shift occurred with the 1993 decision in Daubert versus Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals Inc. This ruling turned judges into scientific referees in charge of deciding what's fair and foul scientific information. It also played into the hands of those who insist that human harm must be proved to have occurred before we can say there is a clear connection between any exposure and a given health problem. Basically, Daubert regulated experimental work, relegated experimental work in lab rats to a marginal position in such matters. The court laid out 4 tests that judges can use in deciding whether the science presented in any case is credible and admissible. 1. Does the evidence rest on testable theory or technique? 2. Has the theory or technique been peer-reviewed? 3. Does a particular technique have a known error rate and standards controlling the technique's operation? 4. Is the underlying science generally acceptable? Who could argue with such questions? In fact, as with much in science, where you stand on these issues depends on where you sit and who owns the chair. The Daubert case involved a lawsuit against a pharmaceutical firm, Merrill Dow, brought by a mother whose child was born with a serious birth defect that she claimed arose from the use of an anti-nausea drug, Bendectin. The firm's expert reported that several different published studies of persons who had used the drug during pregnancy did not show such an effect. So they followed those rules. The firm's experts reported that several different published studies of persons who had used the drugs during pregnancy did not show such an effect. Experts for the plaintiff relied on 2 other types of evidence. Experimental research with animals showing that the use of the compound early in pregnancy produced birth anomalies, and analysis of several individual cases where such birth defects had occurred after the use of Bendectin. The court basically threw out both types of evidence. In effect, it set itself up as the deciding official as to what constitutes acceptable science in this instance. It rejected experimental studies in animals, although altogether as irrelevant to human harm. In doing so, the court ruled that the only proof of harm that could pass muster was sufficient numbers of sick, deformed, or dead children to have made it into published epidemiological studies. The assembly of case reports of such harms could be rejected because it constituted inappropriate type of evidence. This was a stunning decision in many ways. First, the court rejected animal studies as a scientific ground for predicting human harm, and also dismissed clinical case reports, no matter how many, as lacking proof of risk in any instance. And staking this, so that it just kind of goes on and keeps talking about it, so I won't bore you guys with that. But basically, what it's saying is, if not a ton of people are dead, sick, or dying, and it hasn't been written about, it's not real proof, even though, it's proven in animals, it's proven in humans, and there's all these clinical studies that have it. So, just kind of one of those things. And then there was a study about, talking about the Coke is made, not cocaine, but Coke for steel, is made by, doing high heat with coal, and it spits off all this crazy, toxins, one of them benzene, which causes cancer. There was these foundries that when they would hire people to run the Coke stuff, or the Coke foundries, they were in the South, and they'd typically hire, black men, because they were more suitable for it, is what they said. It was kind of the racist, the term or whatever. So they hired a bunch of black workers to do it, and they basically, when the black workers started complaining about having lung cancer, they started suing the foundry, but the foundry said, well, no, it's probably because you're black that you're getting it, and it's probably has all these other risk factors. You probably smoke, you probably do all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So what this study did is they actually looked at that foundry, and then they looked at Geneva Steel, which is here in Orem, which is, well, it used to be here in Orem, and looked at the two for cancers, and they said, no, it has to be workplace, because you're saying it's because they're black and because they might smoke and because they have all these other environmental things. But we looked at Geneva Steel, and it's white people who are Mormon that usually, work there. And Mormons don't drink, don't smoke, live healthy lives, do everything like that. But they still have the same risk of cancer as the black people, So it was one of those things that's just like, the need for more research is always touted as, That's what we got to do. We need more research. We found out that benzene might kill people. We need more research on it. We found out cigarettes might kill people. We need more research. Need more research. Need more research. And it got me thinking about the Susan J. Komen Foundation or whatever, and who supports the research for breast cancer. And it's Coca-Cola is a big sponsor. A few other ones are big name sponsors that you're like, oh cool, Coca-Cola's behind this, and they're wanting to research this problem. But it's like, well, don't we already know what causes cancers? From everything I read, we know what causes cancer. Why do we need more research on it? Why do we need more research to know that estrogen causes breast cancer? We know that happens. We know that estrogen's in milk. We know that estrogen's in birth control pills. We know that estrogen happens when girls have more and more periods over time. Why do we need to research that more? Why does that need to be researched more? I don't know, and it's just one of those things where it keeps saying, don't delay in the name of research. Just because we don't have all of the evidence or anything like that. There's overwhelming evidence saying, yeah, this causes cancer. We see it. Why delay when millions of lives are at stake in the name of research? So, and then there's one last thing I wanted to read you guys before I run out of time here. And then I also, another kind of side note, I have a billboard, and I think I'm gonna change it to cancer. What lies have you heard, or what lies do you believe? Do you really want to know? And point them to this blog, because I think people need to know. And I also think I'm gonna try and sue the cancer hospital for giving me a treatment that shows people, that shows that it gives people cancer, and maybe not melanoma, but other cancers, with no benefit to me. And we'll see how that works. But I'm talking with my lawyer to try and get a little bit more information and to kind of see what I can do. I'm sure it's gonna. Well, if I do go through with it, I'm sure I'm gonna get raised and get in a lot of shit with people. But I'll post that all here too as well. And so at the end, this kind of summed up the entire book, and the reason I've kind of decided to go forward with doing my billboard in this is. There's a story from Rabbi Tarfon in the Talmud that cannot be told too many times. It sums up how we should think about environmental health challenges today. A group of workers has been given a big, complicated job to do. They complain. We do not have the right tools. The task is enormous. We'll never be able to get it done. The rabbi replies, it's not for you to complete the task, but you must begin. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying to begin, and it's like I've told you guys kind of a few times, is it's individual responsibility. It all starts with one step. It's a saying we have in business. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. So anyway, I'll leave you guys with that. Hope you had a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you all later. Peace.